At my wife's 40th birthday, she called me the family disgrace in front of everyone. I raised my glass, toasted her, then reminded her who paid for the party, the house, and the car she arrived in. That was the moment I stopped pretending. People always talk about that one moment. The moment that changes everything. For me, it came with the clink of a champagne glass and a room full of polite laughter that cut sharper than any insult ever had. It was her birthday, the big 4-0. And somewhere between the overpriced wine and the vegan cake no one wanted seconds of, my wife stood in front of 50 people and called me the disgrace of the family. And I toasted her. I raised my glass, smiled like nothing cracked inside me, and reminded her, gently, calmly, clearly, who paid for the party, the house, and the car she arrived in. And in that instant, every face in the room shifted. Some with shock, some with pity, a few with a sick little smirk like they'd been waiting for this implosion. But let me take you back, because the cracks started long before the cake was cut. It was a Saturday in late October, the kind where the air smells like burnt leaves and firewood. I'd been up since 6, like always. That morning, I was out front stringing those globe lights she'd ordered from some influencer's page. You know, the kind, soft yellow bulbs that look like they belong in a Pinterest wedding. She wanted the backyard to look magical, and I wanted her to feel celebrated. 40 years. Big deal. I hung every damn strand myself, cut my knuckles on the metal hooks, balanced on the top rung of the ladder, and even missed a college football game with my buddies to get it done before the caterers showed up. No thanks. No smile. Just a text. Don't forget to vacuum the stairs and get more Chardonnay. That was Jenna in a nutshell. Requests wrapped in expectation, never appreciation. We'd been married 11 years. Long enough to remember what her laugh used to sound like when she wasn't measuring me against her sister's husbands. Long enough to recall how she used to run her hands through my hair when I got home late, saying, "You work too hard, baby." Now she barely looked up when I walked in the room. But I kept trying. Always trying. The guests started arriving around 5. Friends from her book club, people from her Pilates class, a few colleagues from the firm, all dressed like they were attending a wine auction. Meanwhile, I stood by the grill, flipping sliders in a button-down I hadn't worn since our niece's baptism. People greeted her with hugs and air kisses. Me? I got nods, polite smiles. A few folks even asked if I was the hired help. That's what it had come to. I kept telling myself, just get through the night. Jenna floated through the crowd like she was hosting a charity gala, laughing too loud, touching shoulders, flashing that smile she'd stopped aiming in my direction years ago. When I caught her talking to Grant, her ex from college, now divorced and recently relocated to our zip code, my stomach twisted. They hugged a little too long. She laughed a little too freely. I took another sip of scotch. Dinner was served around 7. Long table under the string lights. White tablecloths. Mason jar candles. Everyone clinked glasses, settled into the evening. I was seated next to her Aunt Lorraine, a woman who once told me I looked like a mechanic who wandered into a country club. I didn't correct her. I am a mechanic. I own the damn shop, actually. But guys like me, we don't get credit. We just pay tabs. The meal passed in a blur. Forks clinking. Small talk about real estate and summer homes. I kept quiet, nursing my drink, watching Jenna glow in a crowd of people who adored her for who she pretended to be. Then came the speeches. Her younger sister, Miranda, stood first, gushed about how Jenna always set the standard, talked about her grace, her discipline, her unshakable strength. The woman had cried on my shoulder 2 years ago because Jenna forgot her birthday. But sure, tell the crowd she walks on water. Then it was her father. A slow, sentimental ramble about how proud he was of his little girl and how she had overcome so much. Overcome what exactly? A perfectly middle-class childhood and 2 semesters abroad. I started clenching my jaw then, but I didn't say a word. Finally, someone clinked a glass and said, "Speech, Jenna." She stood, smoothed her dress, and picked up her wine. Her eyes were already shining, a little from the alcohol, a little from the moment. She started slow, thanked everyone, complimented the food, thanked her coworkers, called her sister her soulmate. Then, right near the end, she paused, looked toward me, and smiled this sharp, practiced smile. "And to my husband, Daniel," she said. Everyone turned toward me. I nodded, gave a little half lift of my glass. "You always say life is about showing up," she said. "And you do, even when it's awkward." Even when it's inconvenient. You're always there. A few chuckles. I didn't know if that was a dig or a compliment. And even though, she continued, you're the black sheep in this family, you really do try. The room fell silent. It was like time froze. My face stayed still, but inside, I broke. She didn't flinch, didn't laugh, just sipped her wine and sat down, like she'd told a sweet story about our wedding. I sat there for a beat, then another. My hand tightened around the stem of my glass. And then, without planning, without even fully breathing, I stood. To Jenna, I said. Every eye returned to me. She's beautiful, brilliant, and apparently fearless, I said, voice steady. After all, it takes guts to say something like that with a straight face in front of everyone we know. A few people shifted. A few looked away. But I kept going. Happy birthday, sweetheart. And just as a reminder, the family Disgrace paid for the party, the house, and the Audi you parked out front. Silence. Then I raised my glass again, took a long sip, and sat back down. She didn't speak, didn't even blink. But the red in her cheeks had nothing to do with the wine. The room fumbled into noise again. People trying to pretend they hadn't just witnessed a slow-motion car crash. Her sister whispered something. Her dad looked at me like I'd set the table on fire. But I didn't care. For once, I said it. I said it. After the toast, I didn't linger. I slid my chair back, stepped off the patio, and headed toward the side gate. I didn't slam anything. Didn't throw a tantrum. Just disappeared into the darkness while the party carried on behind me, pretending not to hear what they'd heard. I sat in my truck for a while. Engine off. Just silence and the faint buzz of music from the backyard. My hands trembled, not from fear or regret, but from the adrenaline that comes when you finally stop swallowing your pride and spit it out right in front of everyone. She called me the family disgrace. She really said that. In front of her sisters, her coworkers, her parents. And she said it like it was a joke. Like humiliating me was some cute little roast for her moment in the spotlight. And yet, somehow, I wasn't surprised. When I got home later that night, our real home, not the rental we'd decked out for her party, she was already there. Lights on. Her shoes by the door. I walked in and went straight for the fridge. Grabbed a beer. Didn't say a word. She was sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling on her phone like nothing happened. Like I hadn't just cracked the polished shell she wore in public. You embarrassed me, she said, still not looking up. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how backward it all was. I embarrassed you, I said, stepping closer. You stood in front of 50 people and said I was a disgrace. It was a joke, she snapped. No, I said, it was a reveal. A little peek into how you really see me. She stood then, finally, barefoot, arms crossed, still in that gold dress that cost more than my first car. You're always looking for something to be mad about, she said. Always playing the victim. That one hit differently. Because if there was one thing I'd never done in this marriage, it was play the victim. I carried things. Quietly. Faithfully. I worked overtime so she could cut her hours. I fixed the sink, replaced the roof, covered her mom's medical bills when the insurance fell through. Victims ask for sympathy. I never asked for anything but respect. You know what your problem is? She said, her voice sharper now. You think because you make money, you're owed something. Like love is a transaction. No, I said, setting my bottle down. I think when a man shows up, stays loyal, sacrifices things he doesn't even speak about, he's owed at least not to be humiliated at his wife's birthday party. She blinked. Not because she agreed. Because she didn't have a comeback. Not right away. You humiliated yourself, she muttered. I just nodded. I wasn't going to argue anymore. That was the night something switched off in me for good. Over the next few weeks, we didn't talk much. We lived like polite strangers. Shared the same rooms, crossed paths in the hallway, passed each other the salt without touching hands. It was a Cold War. No bombs, just absence. Just silence that wrapped tighter every day. People kept texting me after the party. A couple of her friends said things like, you shouldn't have done that. But a few of mine, guys I hadn't heard from in months, sent simple messages like, I saw what happened. Took guts. I didn't respond to most of them. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I was tired. Tired of talking about a woman who no longer saw me as her partner. Tired of defending myself for expecting basic decency. One night, I got home late from the shop. Oil under my nails. Shirt soaked from rain. I walked into the house, set my keys down, and saw her sitting at the table, wine glass half full. She looked up like she'd been waiting. "We need to talk," she said. I sat down. Didn't take off my coat. "I've been thinking," she started. "Maybe we've both been wrong. Maybe we've both contributed to this." I wanted to believe that was honesty, but it felt more like strategy, like she saw the shift in me and was trying to pull me back before I slipped too far. "I don't want to fight anymore," she added. "I'm not fighting," I said. "I'm done." Her mouth opened, closed. She looked at me like I'd spoken in a language she didn't know. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," I said, "I'm not going to pretend anymore. That party, that toast, it wasn't just about one night. It was about every damn day you looked past me. Every eye roll, every backhanded comment, every time you made me feel like less than a man." "I didn't mean." "But you did," I said. "You meant it every time." She started crying then. Not loud, just quiet tears that slipped down her cheek like they had somewhere to be. For a split second, I felt something. Maybe guilt, maybe sadness. But it passed. "I don't hate you," I told her. "But I'm tired of loving someone who treats me like an accessory." The next day, I called a lawyer. It wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors. No thrown plates. We just unraveled. Slowly. Like pulling threads out of a sweater until all you have is yarn. She didn't fight me on much. Maybe because she knew. Maybe because she was just as ready. I took my tools, my truck, the cash I'd saved under the radar. She kept the house, the car, the furniture. People always ask if it was worth it. If I regret what I said at that party. And my answer's always the same. No. Because that night, in front of 50 people, I stopped pretending. I stopped letting her write the narrative that I was some disappointment dragging her down. The truth is, I built that life. I funded her image. I carried us through hard months, worked weekends, missed birthdays and holidays to make sure we didn't slip. And all I ever wanted in return was to be treated like a man, a partner, someone worth standing beside. Instead, I became the punchline in her performance. Not anymore. A year later, I ran into her sister Miranda at a gas station. She looked thinner, stressed. She didn't bring Jenna up, just asked if I was doing okay. "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. Because now, I wake up in a place that's mine. Small apartment. Tools on the shelf. Coffee brewed the way I like it. Peaceful. I work, I lift, I breathe. No more birthday parties where I'm the joke. No more cold shoulders in the dark. No more begging for validation from a woman who traded love for status. And sometimes, late at night, I sit on the little balcony outside my place with a beer and look up at the stars. And I remember that man who raised a glass and finally said the thing that had been burning in his chest for years. And I smile. Because that was the night I stopped being the family disgrace and started becoming myself again.